And we're pleased now to be joined on our set at USC by the best-selling author Dennis Prager. His most recent book, Still the Best Hope, Why the World Needs American Values to Triumph. Mr. Prager, is this about exporting American values?
Well, we first have to import them. That's the problem. But yes, it is about exporting. That's why the subtitle is about the world. People need guidance to be good people. We're not born good. This is, by the way, one of the basic differences between left and right. Left-wing ideologies tend to believe we're born basically good. Conservatives understand that we're not. And it's a huge source of the differences between left and right. So if you understand, and my preoccupation is with understanding why there's so much evil in the world. Since I was a child, that's always preoccupied me. I take no credit for it. But it has been. You need ideas to guide people's lives. You need, if you will, ideology. And there are three competing ideologies in the world today. Islamism, or Islam, but I'll explain the difference in a moment, and I do in the book. Leftism and Americanism. Those are the three competing ideas. Two of them are proselytizing. One is not proselytizing, Americanism. And I define Americanism very simply, not simplistically, in the book. That's why there's a coin on the cover. It occurred to me I don't know, about 25 years ago, emptying my pockets at night. I looked at the coins that I had emptied, and sure enough, it was amazing. There they were. The American value system on every coin. Liberty and God we trust, e pluribus unum. That is applicable to all societies in the world, and I can explain them obviously. What I call the American Trinity, those three values, is the greatest value system ever devised for liberty and goodness.
How do you define leftism?
Leftism, well, that's the thing, as I point out, and that's the largest single part of the book. Leftism has characteristics, and it begins, for example, with the belief that the greatest vehicle to goodness is the state. That the state is the great, as I said, vehicle to goodness. That you rely on the state as much as possible for the welfare of people. It begins with a belief that economics explains human behavior, not values, so that the idea that poverty causes crime is a sort of dogma on the left. We who do not subscribe to leftism, but to Judeo-Christian values, to, I think, common sense, know that the basic cause of crime, certainly in our society, is a malfunctioning conscience. People don't rape because of poverty. People aren't killing because of poverty. They're killing because they stink. That's why. And we can't say that. It's just unbelievable. You can say Madoff stinks. People could say everything terrible, and they should, about Bernie Madoff, a white-collar criminal. But you can't say that the average rapist and murderer is of that level. No, it's not really him. It's his parenting, it's poverty, and so on. So the blaming of outside forces for human evil is a very deep part of leftism. The materialist view of life is part of secular leftism. In fact, leftism is by and large opposed to a strong religiosity, because Marx said that the obstacle to revolution is religion, because religion says try to be happy in the world that exists, and leftism says make utopia here. Religion says utopia is in the next life. So those are part of the characteristics, and they're all developed in the book.
Dennis Prager is our guest for the next hour. If you'd like to call in and talk with him, the numbers are up on the screen. 202 is the area code. 585-3885 for those of you in the East and Central time zones. 585-3886 if you live in the Mountain or out here in the Pacific time zone where we are located today. If you can't get through on the phone lines and would like to send a tweet, @BookTV is our Twitter handle. And you can also go to our Facebook page, facebook.com/BookTV. You'll see right there, you can post a comment under Mr. Prager's name. It's listed right there on the top of the page. Now, Mr. Prager, in Still the Best Hope, in the chapter Why the Left Succeeds, or the part of the book, Why the Left Succeeds, favored groups are rarely to blame. you say, about certain issues. What do you mean?
Oh, well, if, for example, the most obvious being racial minorities. If they rape, if they kill, it is because of racism and poverty. During the L.A. riots that took place in this very city, I was a talk show host then as well, and I said, I'll never forget why I said it. An local NBC reporter said, here I am at the corner of two streets in where the riots were happening, and there I see a black gentleman throwing stones at drivers. And I thought, the man throwing stones is not a gentleman. The word I can't use on national television, but the word that comes to mind is not gentleman. And why did he say gentleman? He wouldn't have said, hey, there's a white gentleman wearing a hood burning a cross. Would he have said that? Of course not. The left of center doesn't have the courage and doesn't have the ideology that permits it to blame evil on evildoers. If the evildoer is black, it's white's fault. If the evildoer is white, it's white's fault. You name it. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is another example. Don't blame the Palestinians. After all, what they're doing is understandable in light of how evil Israel is. I mean, by the way, that's a very significant example of the upside-down moral world of the left, that Israel is now increasingly the villain in that conflict. In the history of the world, there has not been a war between a free society and an unfree society. Never. It's either free and unfree or two unfree societies. This is the first time in world history that I know of that the free society is blamed for a conflict. That's thanks to the left. Israel is the villain, not the Palestinians, half of whom vote for a genocidal ideology to prevail. Leftism is an upside-down moral world. I say this with sadness because a lot of people who subscribe to it are decent people, which incidentally is unique to us. We constantly understand there are good people with whom we differ. I have never heard a prominent leftist say conservatives are good people. People who believe that same-sex marriage is wrong and that we should continue to keep the male-female marriage, they're not doing this from hate. They have sincere beliefs in this regard. They can't say that because if we're not demonized, then we can't be fought. We are fought by demonization, what I call six-herb: sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. That's what we are, and that is how they prevail. We're not battling ideas, we're battling bad people. We think they're wrong, they think we're bad.
Dennis Prager, in here you write about the left-wing takeover of universities, and you give as an example the University of California, San Diego. And you list some organizations that the university has. And I just want
to read it?
Yeah, I'm going to read the list.
It's awesome. By the way, this is from Heather McDonald at the Manhattan Institute, and I give her the credit. Go ahead.
The Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. The Chancellor's Diversity Office, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Faculty Equity, the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Faculty Equity Advisors, the Graduate Diversity Coordinators, the Staff Diversity Liaison, the Undergraduate Student Diversity Liaison, the Graduate Student Diversity Liaison, the Chief Diversity Officer, the Director of Development for Diversity Initiatives, the Office of Academic Diversity and Equal Opportunity, the Committee on Gender Identity and Sexual Orientation Issues, the Committee on the Status of Women, the Campus Council on Climate, Culture, and Inclusion, the Diversity Council, the Cross-Cultural Center, the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, Transgender Resource Center, and the Women's Center. As you say, that is a left-wing seminary, not a university.
That's right.
Should not these institutions exist?
Not one of them. They have nothing to do with teaching. It has to do with indoctrination and ideology. Look, this is another tragedy. I was raised in the Jewish tradition where the teacher was honored like a parent. I'm serious, that you are taught. I was raised a religious Jew. I still am religious, though not Orthodox. I've written 2 books on Judaism, and I'm a columnist for the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles. So I'm pretty steeped in my religion. And we were taught to respect teachers exactly like parents. In fact, the Hebrew root for Torah, teacher, and parent is the same. That's how holy the teaching role is in my tradition. The left has sullied the word teacher. I never thought it would be possible. It's like the purest word you have. What the teachers' unions have done to teaching in the public schools, and what the left has done to teaching in universities. I do call them left-wing seminaries. A Christian seminary is there to produce committed Christians. The university is now there to produce committed leftists. And they're succeeding. That's the biggest reason for election results. That is the biggest reason for the shift in American values. You don't hear these ideas at an American campus, not here at USC, and I'm not picking on USC. It doesn't matter where we would be. There are fine teachers at every university, no question, but overwhelmingly, it is an indoctrination. Bill Maher, who's a man of the left, just had a guy from UC San Bernardino, University of California, San Bernardino, and he said to him, I'm just curious, in light of the latest terror attacks, I'm just curious, he said, if there had been a show mocking Islam on Broadway like there is mocking Mormonism, do you think first that anybody would have put it on, and do you think that there would have been violent results? And this professor says, oh, no, it would have been the same. Muslims are perfectly okay with that. This is what you're taught at a campus. You're taught lies. Yale University is so scared of Islamists that they refused at the last moment in their own book on the Mohammed cartoons in Denmark to publish the cartoons. In a book on the cartoons, they would not publish cartoons. On a book on Nazi anti-Semitism, would they have reproduced Nazi cartoons about the Jews? Of course, because no Jew is killing anybody for anti-Semitism, and no Christian is killing anybody for anti-Christianity. There's a Piss Christ thing that went from museum to museum of a crucifix in the quote-unquote artist's urine. Can you imagine a picture of Muhammad in urine? What would have happened? The number of people around the world that would have died, but yet we're taught that there's no bigger threat from the world of Islam than there is from the world of Christianity. That is what is taught here and at every university virtually in America.
Dennis Prager, where can people hear your radio show and when is it on?
My radio show is national. Just go to DennisPrager.com. Also, I have something that I am trying to undo the damage of the university called PragerUniversity.com. We get the finest thinkers in the world in very sophisticated, just 5 minutes. All I ask people for is 5 minutes. PragerUniversity.com. I'm trying to do with whatever God gives me more to live and with the health and energy I have to undo the damage that is being done by leftism. And the sad part is, and I know this because my extended family is mostly liberal, and I love them. And so I always think of them whenever I attack leftism. Am I attacking my dear extended family? Not my immediate family. Thank God my boys are conservative. But I love them, and I know they're good. But I believe that they've been misled because all you study from elementary school to graduate school is from the left. It is a brainwash. If all you studied was evangelical Christianity from childhood to graduate school, wouldn't a liberal say you were brainwashed? Why isn't it true then if you just get secular leftism from elementary school through graduate school? Do you know that here in California, textbooks are now by law, they must include the contributions of the transgendered? By law, you will have to have pages on transgendered contributions, people who were crossed over sex or dressed in the other sex clothing. Isn't that absurd? Isn't that totalitarian? I thought the purpose of a textbook was to tell the truth, not make groups feel good. But as I point out in the book, leftism is overwhelmingly rooted in feelings.
Dennis Prager is the author. Still the Best Hope is the name of his most recent bestseller. This is Book TV on C-SPAN 2, and Louis from Boca Raton, Florida. You're on the air. You're talking with Dennis Prager. Hi.
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Prager and his ilk what he just said about truth. Why should people believe the Bible when that's the biggest novel ever written? Who believes the earth is 5,000 years old? How can you follow a book that tells you the world, the earth is 5,000 years old, and his last commentary about going to Christian schools and to the seminary, they're all child molesters there. How does he say something like that, and he wants to be honest? I mean, I know this man is a right-winger, and he wouldn't give credit to anybody, but my main question is, why is he so hung up on religion when religion is just a false pretense? Answer me how the...
All right, Louis, we got the point. Let's get a response from Mr. Prager.
Okay. First of all, I don't know anybody, and I am rather deeply involved in both the Jewish and Christian worlds, who believes that the earth is 5,000 years old. There are some people who do. I don't frankly give a hoot. I think it's I think the universe is 13.7 billion years old. Whatever science tells me and proves, I believe. So it's a non-issue to me. I don't read the Bible for geology. I read the Bible for moral guidance. So did every founder of this country, including Jefferson. Jefferson removed the miracles, but Jefferson wanted, do you know what Jefferson wanted the seal of the United States to be? We have it. You could look it up on the internet. Jefferson and Franklin, called deists, both wanted, they designed a seal. The seal of the United States was to be the Jews leaving Egypt. That is how steeped in the Bible Jefferson was, not to mention Adams, not to mention Washington, and so on. That's where we got the idea that we get our rights from a creator. That comes from that book. It doesn't come from DNA. It doesn't come from Darwin. Values don't come from secularism. Secularism doesn't have a value system. Secularism is the absence of religion. But the Judeo-Christian value system gave us our values. If God doesn't say do not murder, murder is not wrong. This drives people crazy, and I have debated this at Oxford and elsewhere. And by the way, the leading atheist philosophers all have agreed, if there is no God, the wrongness of murder is solely a matter of personal opinion. I like yellow, you like blue, I like murder, you don't like murder. That's the way it is. Only if there is a God who says do not murder is murder wrong. So I am very fearful for the United States dropping the Bible in favor of, you know what? Feelings. Because I don't trust the human heart very much.
In the section of your book, The Moral Record of Islam, Allah alone runs the world, reason and nature have no say, you write, and that is probably the primary reason why, after a certain date, science ceased to, most likely could not, develop in the Muslim world.
Right, I back that up. We've talked about leftism the whole time, but the book, after all, is about Islamism, and let me explain Islamism. There's Islam and then there's Islamism. Islamism is the belief that the Sharia should govern a society. That's what I am worried about. I'm not worried about the moderate Muslim. It's a non-issue to me, and certainly not the secular Muslim. I am worried about the Muslim who wants a society like the Islamists in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood, and elsewhere, not to mention the Taliban, governing the society. But yes, there was a terrible battle, and I back this up. There are 400 footnotes in the book. There was a terrible battle during the early Middle Ages within Islam. Do things happen because they happen, or solely because God/Allah wills it? And the Allah wills it team, as it were, prevailed. So that the example given, if an arrow hits its target, it is not because of wind velocity or the ability of the archer. It is solely because Allah willed it. And so reason and obviously science ultimately became rather rare in a major part of the Islamic world.
Dennis Prager, Miguel posts on our Facebook page for you. The left is for the state to play a fair arbiter and equalizer role. Once achieved, then, as Marx proposes, the state fades away. In Prager's view, however, corporate religion and social Darwinism should be the rule that oppresses the masses and benefits the few.
Okay, the state fading away I studied Marxism at Columbia University Russian Institute School of International Affairs, so I'm very familiar with that. Everything Marx predicted did not come true. This is one of them. The state not only doesn't fade away, it always gets bigger. I don't know where it is getting smaller on Earth or ever got smaller. It gets smaller only if conservatives prevail, as with Margaret Thatcher, the late great British Prime Minister, or with the late great President Reagan. If willfully it is made small. That is, by the way, the American ideal. This person obviously, God bless him, doesn't agree with the American ideal of small government, but I have a motto, and it is a truism. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. As the government gets bigger, you and I get smaller. As the government gets smaller, we get bigger. We take care of our neighbor. We take care of ourselves. We take care of our families. Instead, as in Europe, the government is everything. The biggest concern of most Europeans is, can I work fewer hours, and how many trips can I take, because now it's a human right in Europe to travel. We have had, why do Americans give so much more charity than Europeans? Why? Are we born better? Of course not. We give far more charity than Europeans because the European has been taught, you don't have to take care of anyone, the state will do it. And why are leftists proud of that? What is beautiful about that? I can be a narcissist because the state will take care of my neighbor. That's what happens. That's why Colorado just had its huge demonstration on behalf of legal marijuana. Wow, if my child had gone to a let's celebrate legalized marijuana, I would have believed I had failed as a parent utterly. The narcissism involved there, that's what preoccupies you. You are now free to get high on marijuana. I mean, just think about what animates a lot of people. And it's painful, frankly. So this, and social Darwinism, this is what the left uses to attack the belief. I don't even know what belief they're attacking. What about social Darwinism? That the talented and the harder working get ahead? Why is that Darwinism? Why isn't that merit? I have in there from, I believe it's a Harvard economist, or Princeton economist, actually. Man won a Nobel Prize, as it happens. Doesn't mean anything to me, but it does to a lot of others. And he shows how much more television poorer people watch than richer people. Because richer people don't have the time to watch TV. They've worked so hard to get ahead. This doesn't mean that poor people don't work hard, but on average, in America, by and large, there is a correlation between hours worked and income. By and large. Of course there are exceptions at both ends.
Book TV is on the campus of the University of Southern California at the LA Times Festival of Books. And Matthew's in Portland, Oregon. Matthew, thanks for holding. You're on with Dennis Prager.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Prager. How are you doing? Pleasure to talk with you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Trying to remember my original question because you said so much. Appreciate your comments. Is that you're making a comment earlier in the interview about how the left sees making utopia on Earth, and that religion is more about utopia in the afterlife. And I would say that I'm a big fan of U.S. history, especially Revolutionary era. Is that the founding of this country and the special values that we have, all men created equal, and all those special new things that are very new to the world. That was a way of not necessarily making utopia, but along those lines. It wasn't just sitting back and just accepting what was. It was trying to make it better.
Right.
And
okay. Let me respond. That's good. Thank you very much. Of course, look, my whole point of writing the book is that we have the best system for making a better society. A better society is not utopia. The President of the United States, 5 days before he was elected, said to a very large crowd, in 5 days, this was in the first election, in 5 days, we will fundamentally transform the United States of America. I don't want to fundamentally transform America. Utopians want to fundamentally transform America. I want to improve America, not fundamentally transform it. That's the utopian streak that is at the heart of leftism. We can make a world where there is no suffering, no evil. Of course, it's a beautiful goal, but to have it as a reality, everyone who has tried to make a utopia, my listener, my viewer, everyone who has tried to make utopia on earth has made hell on earth. Those who want to incrementally improve it make a much better place.
From our Twitter page, Carol Romano asks, Mr. Prager, why are liberals so vested in Boston bombers being homegrown white terrorists?
Well, there was, in fact, an article on one of the liberal websites where the author, a man I actually debated once, so I'm familiar with him, said he hopes that it is a white American, homegrown American. Can you imagine, had somebody written an article, I hope it's a black, or I hope it's a Middle Easterner? Can you imagine the condemnation the tsunami of contempt that he would have received? Look, that man and others don't want to recognize that there really is a moral problem within Islam today. That to say that means you're a hater. See, we can't say truths. If you're against affirmative action, you're a racist. If you think that the human fetus has any rights more than a dog or as much as a dog, you're a sexist. If you think marriage should be defined as a man and a woman, then you're a homophobe. There's a one-word label for all of us that is thrown out. So if I say that, yes, there is a bigger moral problem in the world today, in the world of Islam, than in Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism or Hinduism, then you're an Islamophobe. So therefore, no debate is necessary. And that's the reason they do it, because as I have found, and I have had on my radio show, most of the biggest leftist names, except New York Times columnists, they don't go on conservative shows. No, they just don't. For the record, I want to declare it. Tom Friedman will go on NPR, but he will not come on any of us conservative talk show hosts. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him, even though we will treat him perfectly decently, and that is, I'm known for treating folks I disagree with decently. That's why they come on. I just had on the great University of Chicago Professor Martha Nussbaum, one of the leading names on the left, and she was delighted to be on, and we don't agree on anything. But my motto on my show is I prefer clarity to agreement. So if I clarify where I differ with the left or whomever, good. Back to this. To merely say that there is more of a moral problem today in the Islamic world than in the Christian or Jewish or Buddhist or Hindu is to be called names. People are afraid of being called names. I'm not, and it shuts up a lot of people.
Kathy in Westmont, Illinois, please go ahead with your question or comment for Dennis Prager.
Mr. Prager, I have a question. One of my questions for you is, can you name any society that you're aware of that doesn't suffer from deep levels of poverty, that is not crime-ridden?
Kathy, could you just very quickly explain what you mean by that question?
Well, can I name a society that is crime-ridden, that does not suffer from deep poverty? The point being that there is only crime where there is poverty, is that, first of all, every society has poverty. And I would turn the question around. Were the impoverished ancestors of virtually every living America criminals? My grandparents had less money in absolute and relative terms than the average poor person today. The thought that my grandparents would have committed a crime is laughable, because they were religious Jews who had a value system that never said, if you're poor, you can rape. So it's unbelievable to me to ascribe evil to poverty.
Dennis Prager, Elizabeth posts on our Facebook page, on a personal level, what has been the hardest challenge in your life, and how did you get through it?
Whew. The hardest challenge on a personal level
Yes,
or
sir.
on an ideological?
Personal. She uses the word personal.
Divorce after 17 years was a terribly painful thing. Terribly. You know, you build hopes, you have dreams, and you have a child, and it's all very painful. I am very open on my radio show, as I am here. People know about my life. But I don't think there is a close second to that. I had every dream of a picket fence, not necessarily dogs, but my wives have wanted dogs. I'm currently married to the love of my life, and she loves dogs. I like dogs, for the record, don't love them.
Next call for Dennis Prager comes from Dennis in St. Louis, Missouri. Dennis,
I bet you Dennis is over 50. Dennis, are you over 50?
I sure am, over 70.
Yeah. You know why? There are no young Dennises.
Well,
please go ahead, St. Louis.
I'm also Jewish, and I've been interested in your work for a long time, not because I agree with you, but because I enjoy disagreeing with you. And quickly, and maybe you've already answered this, from a Jewish perspective, how do you explain why so many Jews seem to support a much larger role for the state than you do, and even why so many Jews are more critical of Israel than you are, which by criticism I don't mean supporting the Palestinian cause. And then a comment, I'm also a retired teacher, and I thought you inflated the power of not the power of teacher unions over bread and butter issues, but I thought you inflated the influence of teacher unions over what is actually taught to students. Frankly, I think the state of Texas...
No, not what is taught.
Okay, so,
right.
Texas state...
Okay.
St. Louis, Dennis?
Yeah.
Very quickly, we'll get Mr. Prager to respond, but do you listen to his radio program? Do you read Mr. Prager's columns or books?
I've read some of it. I've read a few of the books and articles, and occasionally have gone on C-SPAN to pick up other programs. I use your website a lot to listen to interviews. And I've read a couple
All right,
of
thank
books.
you, sir.
I remember what they...
All right, well,
thanks for
that.
calling.
Why are Jews on the left is a very, very complex question, and I could devote the hour to it, but I won't. So here in a nutshell, when Jews left Judaism, they stayed religious, but the religion that they affirmed tended to be any form of leftism rather than Judaism. This is not a condemnation, this is not an insult, it's a description. Jews have been taught by Judaism to make a better world. That is the message of the prophets. And if they weren't going to do it through monotheism, which is how we're supposed to do it, ethical monotheism, teach the world that God is the source of ethics and demands ethical behavior, they did it through secular ideologies. They rejected traditional religiosity, and so they accepted a new religiosity which was secular. Many people have described Marxism as secular messianism. Here's a disturbing statistic, though, and it is in my book. And it is not, I didn't come up with this, a professor, I believe, at Brandeis University did. The most pro-communist press in the 1930s outside of the Soviet Union or inside the United States was the Yiddish press. Jews took a new religion as a substitute for Judaism, and that was, you name it, feminism, environmentalism, Marxism, socialism, and for some even communism. But Jews love isms. Jews are to isms what Italians are to operas. They create new movements, and everyone will make this great world, and instead of using the religion that came with being Jewish. And it's a very sad development to me.
Still the Best Hope, published by HarperCollins. Nancy is in Luthersville, Georgia. Go ahead with your question or comment, Nancy.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for being there. Hello, Mr. Prager. This is the first time, unfortunately, I have ever heard your name, although you're very interesting.
Where do you live?
I live south of Atlanta in Georgia.
Oh, I'm on in Atlanta every day for 3 hours.
I shall have to check you
anyway,
out.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm a Christian whose mentor is my radical red print guy, and those are the words I go by. I am neither left nor right. I find that both are cast in stone and tend to be shades of one party, which are corporate-owned. Jesus said we are all one. And within that, I am often troubled by the talking heads of both sides. Pardon the phrase, I don't mean that as a pejorative, where they don't do anything to reach out one to the other. I find that our biggest problem is reaching across laterally, and it seems that the talking folks of both sides tend to help those.
What do you mean by reaching out? What does it mean? Does it mean agreeing with the other? Does it mean dialoguing? I know on my show, I have the leading spokesman, whenever possible, from the left. Is that reaching out? Is that what you mean? If so, I'm innocent of your charge.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Well, it actually wasn't a charge. It's simply an observation. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I have never heard you, and I will seek you out.
That's quite all right. I'm not. I know that's right. I'm not. I'm only personalizing it. I'm an example.
I have heard other folks like Mr. Beck and the others, and what I find is a lot of talk that separates us, and I'm talking now about the everyday people, which is what I am, and I find that rather than when we talk laterally, what I hear are a lot of talking points from both sides instead of I am 69, and so I have been around Jesus for a long time, and I know I really believe he didn't stutter. And I never hear his words put out in terms of reaching together, coming together, and trying to resolve our differences, because we are diverse. It's in our differences that are constantly reinforced that create the problem. The other question I have for you, if I may, is I consider myself a Christian of neither party, but I suppose many on the right would call me more to the left because of we are all one. And I'm wondering why the Christian left is often ignored, and are they not viable? And my final question is, do you really believe, because I lived in Ireland a long time, my father was Irish, rest his soul, and do you really believe that the rest of the world do not have comparable values? And I wish you blessings and belly laughs, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I wish you blessings, too. That's correct. I don't think the rest of the world has comparable values. That's exactly right. If I thought so, not only would I have not written the book, I would have abandoned the belief that there is better and worse in the universe. You believe Jesus has better values. Who doesn't believe that what they believe in has a better value system? If my value system isn't better than every other, then I will adopt the one that's better. I don't want to live, I have one life to live on this earth, and I want to live it with the best values I could find. If it's not the American value system, then I'll take the leftist, or I'll take the Islamic, or I'll take whatever it might be. But this system of liberty in God we trust, e pluribus unum, has devised the most, ironically, egalitarian society in that there's such fluidity between the classes or among the classes. And it has given more people more prosperity, given more people more liberty, more opportunity than any society in the history of the world. You judge an ideology by its fruit. I like the American fruit. It has given people blessings. It gave two brothers blessings who decided to then murder the people who blessed them. It's a little sick. But yes, of course I believe ours is a better value system, just as you believe Jesus is a better value system. And by the way, the people who believed in Jesus founded this country, but they understood that it wasn't Jesus alone that was necessary, that you needed small government, and that you needed e pluribus unum from many one, which is the statement that race and nationality don't matter.
Dennis Prager, Nancy also talked about lateral reaching out. A lot of talk in Washington about...
the reaching out, there were two separate. There's the reaching out between Republicans and Democrats. Look, that's a tactical question. But on the larger question of the society, what does reaching out mean? We conservative talk show hosts have leftists on routinely, not just myself, routinely. My colleagues, I'm syndicated by the Salem Radio Network, my colleagues have leftists on regularly. They never have us on. Never. MSNBC is virtually devoid of any of the ideas you just heard. NPR is virtually devoid. PBS is virtually devoid of it. So, and not to mention the universities, we are very happy to debate. I have offered, I would love to see a debate between Paul Krugman and the head of the Cato Institute, for example. I think we should try to raise $100,000 for cancer research to have Paul Krugman debate a prominent conservative economist, and so as not to make it ego 2 on each side or even 3 on each side. But they don't debate. They call us names. If you believe marriage should be between a man and a woman, then you are called a hater. So who wants to debate haters? I wouldn't debate the Ku Klux Klan. That's how the left feels. We are, if you are not on the left, you're a hater. You are sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. Howard Dean, the former head of the Democratic Party, candidate for U.S. president, said that Republicans go to bed at night not caring about the welfare of children. This is typical of how we are perceived. And that's what sustains leftism. Because the right must be so awful, I better be on the left because I have a good heart.
Where'd you grow up? What'd your parents do?
Grew up in Brooklyn, New York. What did my parents do? My father, who is still with us, he is 94, and will be on my radio show on his birthday, as he has been every year for years, was, until very recently, a certified public accountant. I am one of his clients, by the way, and he's very, very good. And by the way, his rate was great. I must say that, too, aside from everything else. And my mother, during her heyday, she ran a 300-bed nursing home. So she passed away 3 years ago.
Were they conservative?
That is a very interesting question. Were they conservative? I was raised, look, Brooklyn Jew, Columbia University. Give me a break. You're going to be a Democrat. I mean, it comes in your birth certificate. Nationality, it says Democrat. So, of course I was a Democrat. The first Republican I ever voted for was Ronald Reagan, and I voted for Jimmy Carter first term. But in values, I think ultimately the values that I got at home were conservative. But we were Democrats. You know, that just was a given. But what got me, this was what got me, because fighting evil is the single biggest passion of my life. And I knew that communism was as genocidal as Nazism. I didn't understand how the left could condemn anti-communism. And they did. They didn't defend communism. Some did, but most didn't. But they did condemn anti-communism. That's what turned me away. If you can't say that communism is the greatest evil of our post-Nazi era, then your moral compass is broken. And indeed, the leftist moral compass is broken.
Your parents make a cameo in Still the Best Hope when you're talking about, in the section Why the Left Succeeds, talking about secondhand smoke.
Oh, you really read it carefully. That's correct. Look, I have a list of 12 hysterias of the left. Hysteria is a left-wing methodology from heterosexual AIDS in America, which was a fraud. There was no epidemic of heterosexual AIDS in America. Yes, in Africa, but not in America. The number of girls dying of anorexia was exaggerated by feminists by about a factor of 1,000. And the number of homeless in America was a phony number. Mitch Snyder, who made it up, admitted it on ABC TV, then I think later committed suicide. The number of hysterias, and I think secondhand smoke is an example.
Next call for Dennis Prager comes from Bob in Mira Loma, California. Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
Hi.
You know, where to start here? It's hard for me to know where to pick up on any of your statements. For instance, your generalizations are rather all-encompassing. Look at the statement: the Jews adopted communism as their new religion.
No, I said leftism. I said leftism, and I said the Yiddish press was the most pro-communist press in America in the 1930s. I'm very careful with my language. Most Jews were not communist or pro-communist, and I never said that they were.
Go ahead, Bob.
That was a different statement. Those are two separate statements that you made at different times. But you definitely said that Jews adopted communism as the new religion. However,
I said no, sir. I'm sorry. I don't know what the routine is here. I let people who differ with me have all the time they want on my show, and this is not my show. But you can't say what is not true and then pass over it. I said when Jews abandoned Judaism, they stayed religious in their desire to make a better world and picked a whole host of other isms. Environmentalism, feminism, socialism, Marxism, and I said a few communism. That's what I said, sir. It's all on tape.
Go ahead. Bob, go ahead and finish your statement.
Well, I was going to say there was no question about the fact that he said it was talking about communism, and instead of saying some Jews, it was Jews. The statement that you made about the reporter saying a gentleman threw some stones, and he was no gentleman. That's really pretty much nitpicking. I was a journalist in Chicago. And back in the 50s, when we covered a lot of race riots, when blacks were moving into neighborhoods, and the people who were rioting were mostly the people that I talked to were right-wingers. So most of these statements that you make are so general in their makeup.
All right, Bob. Let's get a response. Dennis Prager.
Okay, there's nothing to respond to. He didn't say anything I said was wrong. Thank you for calling.
Joe posts on our Facebook page, how problematic is the modern culture that revels in cynicism, profanity, and consumerism to the project of American renewal?
Well, it's a very, there's a what was there? There was consumerism, there was cynicism, and what was the other?
Profanity.
And profanity. Well, they all have different origins. First of all, I don't have this belief that consumerism is this great evil that people say. Every year I defend people who buy a Christmas gift, for example. I think it's one of the most beautiful traditions in America that people spend time thinking about what will make a relative or friend happy on Christmas. If people think that that's a disgusting part of the culture, we have a different value system. Is Christmas made too consumerist? I just ask people who say that every good thing can be taken to an extreme. So of course, you could have too much vitamin C, you could have too much water. I mean, but in general, I think that it's a credit to Christianity that there is a holiday where millions of people, where the bulk of society thinks about buying people things that will bring them joy. So that I don't buy the consumerist problem. The consumerism keeps people employed. It enables people to have a job, to bring food to their family. Cynicism, I think we are raising a jaded, I would use jaded actually more than cynical. I think there's a lot of jadedness among young people because they're sexualized so early. This is a real tragedy, and it's a discussion for a whole other time why that has happened. Kids who have early sex tend to be jaded, and that's a problem. And the third was, again, what cynicism...
profanity.
Profanity.
Yeah.
I have a chapter, actually, on profanity. With the death of the Judeo-Christian value system, the concept of the holy and the division between holy and profane is obliterated. And so a lot of folks on the secular left curse publicly. And I actually document it, where cursing... Now, everybody, most people, including myself, will use a curse word in private. I don't do it a lot, but I do it. But public, that's a different thing. It's like public nudity. San Francisco had a 7-6 vote outlawing public nudity, but a lot of San Franciscans don't see anything wrong with it. Secularism has effects. The notion that we're created in God's image and shouldn't have our genitals exposed like an animal is a religious idea. With the death of religion, nobody sees wrong with people walking around naked.
Dennis Prager, your book has been sitting out here on this table, and as you can see, a lot of crowd here. People have been walking by saying, Is Dennis Prager going to be on? Yes. Good. Is Dennis Prager going to be on? Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Real 50-50 here.
Yeah. Well,
but everybody
look,
has an opinion.
At the LA Book Fair at USC, if it's 50-50, I'm doing very well, I must say. So I'm very happy to hear it if it really was 50-50. Look, I care about everything or nearly everything that folks on the left say they care about. Compassion, goodness, concern for others. But I think leftism hurts those causes. So I'm a bigger problem to them than the guy who just shouts at them. And I come from within that world. I understand it. And I think that it's intellectually and morally unsound. And because I'm not a yeller or screamer or hater or any of that, and that's why people on the left who do come on feel so comfortable coming on. I gave you one example recently. I mean, Howard Zinn, the biggest of all the leftist historians, came on my show. And I asked him point blank. It's in the book. I said, Professor Zinn, would the world have been better had there never been a United States of America? And he said he's agnostic on the issue. I wonder how many people who assign his book, it's the most widely assigned, single most widely assigned history book in the United States by teachers. I wonder how many would agree with that. Maybe the world really would have been better had there never been a U.S.
The Internet, and that's how he tweets. The Internet tweets in, this guy wants big government to outlaw marijuana.
Yes, that's right. I do. I'm not an anarchist. That's correct. This notion that if you're for small government, you're therefore for no government, I have never bought. And yes, there are things that I would like to see to continue to be. I don't want any new bans. But had marijuana been legal for the last 50 years, I would have said nothing. But to introduce it as a new innovation, it will only have a deleterious effect on society. A woman wrote to me from Wyoming. I try to read my mail, but it's, you know, there's a lot of mail. She wrote a thoughtful letter. She loves my show. She was extremely laudatory, but she said she has marijuana every night. She smokes marijuana every night, and she has 2 kids, a husband. You know, she has all these wonderful values, and I believe her. And then I wrote her back this. I said, you know, I smoke a cigar and a pipe. I have since high school. And I have smoked in front of my children from birth. And they're very healthy, incidentally. They don't appear to be dying of secondhand smoke any more than I am from my parents' secondhand smoke. And I said, I'm curious, would you smoke your marijuana in front of your children like I smoke my cigar? I didn't get a response. And I'm not saying that she doesn't have one, but I can't give you her response. Everyone knows there's a difference between marijuana and tobacco, or even my father had his scotch on the rocks every night, but I would have been a different person if my father had a joint every night.
Final comment from viewer Jillian asks, do you ever regret not running for office?
Yes.
Will you ever run for office?
I don't think so, but look, I live in California, so it renders running for an office as a Republican a form of kamikaze activity. But the other is I am torn. There are 2 quick things I want to say on this. One is I don't want power. I want influence. I want to touch people's hearts and minds. Politicians have power. A talk show host with millions of listeners and a writer of books that people read influences people's thinking. I rather do that than have power. The other is I don't have the money to run. Thanks to campaign finance reform, essentially only the very wealthy can run. That's one of the ironies of campaign finance reform. But yes, I debate whether I should have often.
Dennis Prager, his most recent book, a bestseller, Still the Best Hope, Why the World Needs American Values to Triumph.